I am not an expert on the algorithm. I've pleaded with it. We've had some flirty conversations. Maybe we've made out a couple of times. My relationship with the algorithm has gotten a bit more complicated recently, leaving me with many questions and thinking about where we stand. Like, what are we? Despite being a generally creative person, I'm also very analytical, and I pride myself on being a creative problem solver rather than just a designer or an artist. Throughout my entire time posting on various social media platforms, I've treated the algorithm like a problem to solve. And if the solution to this problem were a formula for consistent number growth, that's not something I can write down to share or to sell. But I think it might be something that I maybe have, or I'm in the process of having. Either way, I've been thinking about the algorithm a lot recently, and I wanted to share it with the class. You might notice a section of this video called The Secret Formula. I can't stop you from skipping there, but you should know that there are no shortcuts. I have no way of knowing what you do, but you have to live with your choices. Let's start with how the algorithm works. I've been reading some books recently, like the literate person that I am, so here are my references. According to Filter World, the basic definition of an algorithm is a digital mechanism that absorbs piles of user data, pushes it through a set of equations, and spits out a result deemed most relevant to preset goals. Social media websites, just like many other apps, websites, and tech companies, use algorithms to process our personal information and figure out the best content to show us while they advertise to us, or sell our data to other companies that'll do that. These websites don't make money by having users, so their business models are based on the idea of micro-targeting. They are gigantic engines for delivering adverts, making money by having their millions of users actively engaged on their websites, interacting with sponsored content. This book shows the infamous conversation with Zuckerberg boasting about how people are dumb for giving away their information, which has been presented as a Machiavellian attitude to privacy, but this author makes the argument that we are exchanging our information for access to the algorithm that allows us to connect with others, stay informed, or be entertained. Whether or not it's an exchange we're excited about, or just ambivalent about, or complacent with is another thing. Most of us accept this kind of intrusion because we aren't given another option. It's just the cost of doing business with these companies, and it's a cost we're willing to bear. So far, this is all pretty standard knowledge about the algorithm, but what I thought was interesting was how the focus of these books was on the idea of consumption. And by consumption, I don't mean pulmonary tuberculosis. I mean the definition you probably thought that I meant of when people see and take in the stuff on social media. I understand why. We all consume, but only a small percentage of us create. In most online communities, 90 to 99% of users are lurkers, who never or rarely contribute, and 1% of users account for almost all of the participation. I'm part of the 1%, only in this context. The algorithm thinks about consumers and what people want to read, watch, or interact with, but I don't think whether our stuff is discovered or shared is even a factor it considers. You know, being a content creator is the hardest job in the world, and it's not nice that the algorithm doesn't even think about us. While one book had some conversations with famous content creators, and I'll talk about that at the end of the video, I noticed a focus on what the algorithm gives you to consume, but hardly anything about how to get the algorithm to take from you. Content creation is not affected by an algorithm that controls how many numbers you get on the things you give it. Instead, what we consider the algorithm to be is just a giant, indecipherable equation of human decisions, actions, and preferences, where every single like, comment, and whatever is a human who decided to participate. When it comes to people who make things, There is no algorithm to figure out. There are just a bunch of people on the internet. So let's talk about people. As a group, people are stupid and selfish. It was George Carlin who said, think of how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that. We all get to laugh at his joke because no one thinks they're stupid. I'm not saying this out of a sense of superiority because I think I'm so smart, but this is important to think about because social media wasn't designed to challenge us intellectually. At its core, social media is not about intentional and thoughtful engagement with media, but rather consumption. And the things that increase consumption tend to be mindless trends, unoriginal nothingness, rage bait, and trolling. Back in my day, we had funny text posts and pseudo-intellectual discussions on Tumblr. But now the kids can't watch a funny video without being stared at. Every time I see a TikTok that plagiarizes a Tumblr post is a harsh reminder of how chronically online I am and have always been. There's this theory that's been going around called the dead internet theory, which is the idea that the internet is filled with bots and AI. But I have a theory I'd like to introduce that's the internet child influx theory. According to this UNICEF article from 2018, more than 175,000 children go online for the first time every day. And worldwide, 1 in 3 internet users is a child. This would explain so much of the slop on the internet right now. If you feel confused about what the algorithm picks up, you should think about whether or not the stuff you're sharing online is designed to appeal to children. Are you making clickbait, brain rot type nonsense? Why not? Here's a post of mine that felt like it got more attention than it was supposed to get. It was this rotoscope animation that I drew, printed out, and bound into a flipbook. And if you look at the comments, you could see why maybe this post of mine was picked up by the algorithm. I think a lot of these are funny, but I feel old reading this comment section, and I'm way too young to be feeling old. Another thing that children are responsible for is the TikTok-ification of social media, because TikTok is allegedly designed to be addictive to kids. We also know this content is incredibly profitable after seeing all of the other social media platforms copy the vertical short-form video format. I've seen a lot of complaints, especially from artists who don't want to have to make videos just for their artwork to be seen on social media. But there's not an algorithm that has broken into our homes, held a gun to our heads, and forced us to post reels or shorts or TikTok videos. Once again, I'm asking you to think about how people and children watch videos. Like, do you watch a lot of short videos? I know I have a habit of watching a reel, maybe rewatching it if it's entertaining or really funny, and then maybe letting it play like 3 to 4 more times while I read all of the funny comments. No one sits for 2 or 3 minutes looking at one picture, but it's easy to spend that much time looking at one video. Here's a comparison. I posted this family picture / Christmas card near the holidays last year. I wanted to show off all of the paintings I'd finished around this time, and I thought it'd be funny. A few months later, I posted this reel. Making a reel isn't automatically going to get more engagement than a post just by the nature of it being a reel, but broadly speaking, it's hard to make a picture that can compete with a moving picture. By the way, if it's not obvious, these paintings are all of actor Pedro Pascal, so that's another factor to consider. I've seen a lot of complaints about how fan art gets more attention than original art. Once again, I don't think this is an inherent feature of the algorithm. I think it's understandable that people are more likely to engage with something that has some familiarity. We humans are creatures of habit because new things are scary. We love remakes, reboots, reruns, requels. When it comes to portraits, it makes sense that people respond to faces that they know. I get so many comments from people excited that I painted their favorite internet funny person, as I like to call them. People who were proud to recognize the person I painted immediately, or even going as far as tagging the people that I painted. Especially with all the comments with inside jokes, it's obvious that there's a massive community of people that comes with fan art. Maybe the algorithm helps bring my art to this community, but I just know that people make this more complicated than the generalization that an algorithm favors fan art. Here's one more argument I'll make for you about how the algorithm supposedly works so that I can share my counter argument. You might say that there's an algorithm that shadow bans for saying prohibited words, especially with self-promotion. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think it's silly to say Patreon with the number 8 or shop with a 0 instead of shop, or using the chain emoji instead of saying link in bio. This self-imposed newspeak is really grating to me. If you think the algorithm suppresses the word Patreon, why wouldn't they just add every other variant to that list of no-no words? I could understand that one explanation might be that websites don't want people to leave, so because you mention a shop or you share an outside link, the algorithm suppresses your post. I don't think that's the case. I have a theory that posts with self-promotion get less attention simply because people want to see our artwork, but they don't want to see our ads. I don't think that's crazy. It would be silly to complain that a post that is basically money please has fewer likes than a post sharing a cool piece of art. We are allowed to market ourselves, but it's not the fault of the algorithm that people don't want to see it. We can't be shocked when people don't want to see ads. But hey, that's just a theory. We should stop blaming the algorithm for our lack of likes, views, and comments. There's not an algorithm that is plotting against us or ignoring us. It's people who are plotting against us. No, it's what I've been saying. People are selfish and oftentimes children. They love their TikTokified videos, they love fan art, and they're fed up with ads, rightfully so. But whether or not you agree with me about how no algorithm considers the content suppliers, I think it's beneficial for us people who make things to act like there's no algorithm to figure out or overcome. Don't think about the algorithm, just focus on making your art. That's stupid advice. Platitudes aren't helpful, so here are some concrete steps I've taken that I would recommend. I'm not sponsored by these steps. I'm just recommending them because I've had a good experience with them. Unless you're making your living from social media, and most of us aren't and never will, embrace being an amateur. The etymology of the word amateur comes from the Latin word amare, which means to love. I think it's important to remember why you started doing something. Amateurs have nothing to gain from starting a skill or doing it for fun. They're just doing something out of their love for it. You don't receive any of the benefits from trying to be a professional artist or content creator, so why are you willing to carry these burdens, stresses, and expectations of being a professional? The hustleification of social media is a real problem, and feeling like you need to work harder or be better or commit to the hustle because you're thinking about it as a hypothetical future job isn't helpful. I appreciate this anecdote about creative advice from the author Kurt Vonnegut. He says to practice any art, no matter how well or badly, not to get money and fame, but to experience becoming, to find out what's inside you, to make your soul grow. His assignment for the kids was to write a poem, don't show it or recite it to anybody. Tear it up into teeny weeny pieces and discard them. If the idea of making something and then destroying it, or even just never sharing it online, is painful to you or feels like a waste of time, I think that's concerning, and I would want you to figure out how to be fulfilled by the process of creation and how to experience becoming without focusing on the outcome, be it internet numbers or some other reward. It's about the journey, not the destination, would be the platitude, but Kurt's advice is much better, I think. In the spirit of doing things out of love, I've focused on passion projects for the past couple of years. In addition to my more standard portraiture, I've worked on projects on the side that are just supposed to be fun and interesting. For example, last year I designed the Pedro Pascalender, which is why I made all of those paintings I showed earlier. It was a lot of work, but I just wanted to make a calendar. I also have my flipbook projects. I showed one earlier, but I've made a few of them. They're so silly, and I have so much fun with them. Sometimes people love my passion projects, and sometimes they don't, but I keep making them regardless. While social media is the place that has made it possible for people to discover my artwork, it's not what I want to be known for. I'm an artist, and I make art, as silly as these art projects are sometimes. I'm not making content for the algorithm, and I don't want to be known as a content creator. I'd rather be called a slur instead. I'm kidding. That was a sarcastic remark, and not an invitation. One idea I'd like to mention with these silly projects I've worked on is the irony of audiences preferring more specific and personal art rather than generic media with supposed mass appeal. Every time I use the word irony, I have to Google it to make sure I'm using it right. No one ever uses it right. Coincidences are not ironic. But there's this temptation that the algorithm may bring our art to more people if we make stuff that appeals to everyone. The reality is that when you make something to appeal to everyone, you end up appealing to no one. As an example, my landscape paintings, which would theoretically have a broader mass appeal, are consistently outperformed by my cringy fan art. And I say that affectionately. I love my cringy fan art. People can tell whether you're passionate about the art that you make. That being said, I've been putting a lot of effort into my landscapes recently, and I'm very proud of them. But I think it's pretty obvious why my self-indulgent fan art, despite being quite niche, is surprisingly enjoyed by more people. It just has an extra something. It's the brain rot. While I'd like to think the algorithm hasn't affected how I make my art, if I'm truly honest with myself, I know that that's not the case. I just mentioned that my landscapes get less engagement, and in the past, I have used that as an excuse to stop making them. I can say that I've been trying to fall in love with the process of making, but it's not just one change. Every time I start a piece of art, I am repeatedly faced with the choice of what I'm making and who I'm making it for, whether it's for me or what I think the algorithm would want. And I think the focus on the algorithm has also tainted digital spaces for artists. Instead of an art community that's about showcasing cool projects, sharing resources and tutorials, and connecting with fellow artists, some well-known content creators have transformed this little corner of the internet into something unrecognizable. They think it's okay to shill their advice in the form of overpriced courses or mentorships, and they promise their audiences, filled with aspiring artists, that if they follow their advice, they can also figure out the algorithm and be just as successful. They are betraying the community that helped them build their business. I want to help rebuild and support an art community to be proud of, where passion projects can be shared without the infinite streams of ads and sponsors and self-promotion. We should earn a living and market ourselves and our artwork, yes, but we can't all be successful by marketing toward each other. That's not sustainable. Instead of profiting from our fellow makers, we should be trying to support them. How can you expect an audience if you don't care to engage with the community that you're a part of? When was the last time you left the type of supportive comment you wished you would get? In Filter World, the author talks about how his art critic friend presented him with the thought that he should look at a painting for as long as it took the artist to paint it. I think that's an interesting thing to think about. With the recent popularity of live streams, it's certainly possible for someone to have perceived a painting for as long as it took to make it. On a spectrum of looking at something for 1 second as you scroll past it, and looking at something for 5+ hours, I'm trying to increase my numbers a little bit. It is not an algorithm that gives us likes, comments, shares, bookmarks, or any other form of engagement. Instead, the algorithm hands out impressions. Each impression is an opportunity for a view, a like, and/or a comment, and then people give us these things if they want to. These are real people, and you are also a person, presumably. I think that in present times, it's tough to find a ladder to success because so many people have pulled up the ladder behind them. Don't just support fellow artists out of the hope of reciprocation, but you might be more likely to find a ladder after helping create one for someone else. Ladder? I hardly know her. For many reasons, but especially because there is no algorithm trying to match your artwork to your perfect audience, I truly believe the algorithm does not have the effect that people seem to think it does. The algorithm is not responsible for giving us views or for not giving us views, and it's so much more complicated than what a potentially arbitrary set of instructions on some computer network has decided is the level of engagement earned or worked for. Whether or not you agree with me in this argument that I've presented about the algorithm not existing for us people trying to find an audience for our work, I hope I've shared an interesting perspective. I've had a little bit of success with the algorithm. I'm not an expert on this topic, obviously, but I do think I'm qualified enough to say this. There is no shortcut to making the algorithm like you, and any attempt to jump ahead will only waste your time by making you backtrack. I want to share one more thing that I came across in my research. This book, which I've referenced at a few different points throughout this video, presents an argument about how the tech industry is perceived as a meritocracy, and I'm extending this to the algorithm itself. A meritocracy is a system based purely on merit, and the people who are at the top got there because they were smarter, more innovative, and more ambitious than everyone else. I also think there's this element of adoration and worship for the people at the top because they have supposedly figured it out. This idea of a meritocracy is harmful because it presumes that the algorithm can determine quality or effort. It supposedly rewards the better creators with more attention and success. Nigel Cavina, a TikToker with more than 4 million followers, has perpetuated this idea. In an interview in this book, he says that he sees creators get frustrated with the algorithm. They're assuming something's wrong. It's a lot easier to blame the algorithm than to try to say, my content isn't that good. Essentially, get good. I think it's fair to say that smaller creators sometimes have bad content, but it's an oversimplification. And just because something is popular doesn't make it good. Just because his videos get views, that doesn't make them good. Presumably, he believes the meritocracy has rewarded him with the success that he deserves. His website puts him at the top of a bonsai tree, a website which, by the way, says nothing about him other than here are the other websites where you can find my content. Nothing he has made is worth sharing or talking about in a space disconnected from the numbers that give his work the value he perceives it to have. Metrics tend to speak louder than the piece of culture itself. Not only do they act as a measure of success, but they create success, because they dictate what is recommended to and seen by audiences in the first place. But the algorithm doesn't curate the best content. No algorithm measures the quality of every piece of text, picture, or video uploaded and distributes engagement to the most deserving content. The only algorithm that exists is the one that gets users, and by users I mean people, real people, to spend more time on its app, to produce more data, to track its users, and sell their attention to advertisers more efficiently. Nigel has only won the social media popularity contest because he happens to make profitable videos. I'm trying to be more mindful of how me and my actions contribute to the algorithm I'm complaining about. Making this video has cemented that for me. If the algorithm and I are in a turbulent, messy relationship, I'm just as much to blame here. That was a callback to the beginning of the video. We need to stop thinking about the algorithm because there is no algorithm for us as we think we know it. I know we just thought about the algorithm for the past half an hour, but we can be done. We can be done now. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to tune in for my next one where I'll continue filming at new, different camera angles, and eventually we'll have enough views of this room to put together a room tour. Bye.